Kumlenen Ablat Gemara. Today's daf is Daf Lamed Dalet Omed Aleph. It is Tes Nissen. We learned in the Mishnah yesterday that there's a situation where you can have 4 Avedis done by 4 different people, a total of 16 Korban Chatois. What happened was that Reuben and Shimon went ahead and got engaged with 2 women. And then at the chuppah, they swapped wives. So already there were 2 Isurim. There's the Isur of a married woman, and there was the Isur of the brother of a wife. We're talking about 2 brothers, Reuben and Shimon, married 2 women. So therefore, Reuben and Shimon, they changed the swapped of the wives. You have an Isur of Eishes Ish and the Isur of Eishes Ach, but these 2 Isurim happen concurrently. So that's called Isur B'Vasachas. Then they married Reuven, then first married Leah. Shimon comes along and marries then Rachel, committed a 3rd Aveda. And regarding Leah, there's no real addition. But regarding Shimon now, as a result of marrying the sister, he also has now an Isser extended to the rest of the remaining sisters. That's called an Isser Koil. You're extending out the Isser. And then if the wife happens to be a Nida that night, that is an Issa that adds to the women themselves, that even that Reuben's wife now is also to Reuben herself. That's called an Issa Moisef. So who holds all of these 3? That an Issa will fall on top of another Issa if it's an Issa Koil, extending Issa Moisef, you're adding, and Issa Vasachas. Says in Maramanai Tano, top of the page, who is the author of this opinion? The Issa Koil, Issa Moisef, Issa Vasachas. Now already we discussed in the last few days that it's possible that this is Rabbi Yossi, according to one version of the argument of Chia and Bar Kapara. You want to see a Tana that says it clearly. Rameir is actually Rameir. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, Yesh Oichel Achila Achas. It is possible to eat once, and yet Chayiv Oleh Arba Chatois, and you committed 4 sins at the same time. And furthermore, not only did 4 sins, as we'll soon see what happened there, but also you will have an Asham Me'ilas, because you're eating the fats that belong on the Mizbeach, so you're stealing from the Beis HaMikdash. And for that, you bring a korban asham, a guilt offering. What's the case? A Talmudic person, if a Talmudic person is eating fats, is eating a korban, but what part of the korban you're eating? The chaylev. So there's the Isser of chaylev here, the Isser of a Talmud eating kachim, and there's furthermore, who knows it happens to be left over min mukdashi from Hegdish, and furthermore was on Yom Kippur. So you're not allowed to eat Kippur generally. So you already have 4 Vedas. And Meir goes further. Im hois Shabbos. And Meir says, if it happened to be Shabbos that same day, when you carry it outside, chayiv, you are chayiv. Why does he mention Shabbos? What about Yom Kippur itself? You're not allowed to carry Yom Kippur. There's a machlekes whether there is Eid of a Hitzah Yom Kippur or not. And Meir clearly holds, as Rashi explains, and Tais talks about it, that the Meir holds there's no Issa in the Torah of carrying on Yom Kippur. But what do we see from here? That there's a number of Isurim taking place here. As soon as the animal is born and it's chulin, chaylev is already forbidden, but you're not allowed to eat. We learned in Gemara Pesachim, you're allowed to have hana from chaylev. It says lachem, but you're not allowed to eat it. And then what happened was that he made it hegdish. So now you're not allowed to have any hana from hegdish. So there's an additional isur on this chaylev, or the isur of hana. So that's an isur moisef. And as a result of that, you cannot eat it for that reason. Then there's also the Isser of Zoros. Because Hegdish is Chau, you're not allowed to eat it as a Zor. Eating Hegdish. And then you have Noiser, and Noiser adds more Isser to it because you're not allowed to even put it on the Mizbeach. So therefore, that's again Isser Moiser, and also became, because now also the Kohanim are not allowed to eat it. So these are called Isser Moiser. Then you add tumah. So by adding tumah, what happens is other parts of the animal you're not allowed to eat as well. So that's an Isser Koil. Just extend the Isser out further. Doesn't add any more Isser to this thing itself. Nobody was allowed to eat it before, cannot eat it now. Nobody's allowed to eat it right now because the Kohen already couldn't eat it anyway because it was nicer. So therefore, all it does is it extends the Isser out further out. That's Isser Koil. And then you tell me that it's also the Isser of Shabbos, and Shabbos and Yom Kippur all happen at the same time. That's Issa B'Vas Achas. So you have all these Isurim, and Meir holds clearly it's us. Now, what does it mean? What are you throwing in, eating, and walking outside on Shabbos? Why don't you just say if you're writing a piece of paper at the same time? What's the Meir adding? Because the Meir is adding is In order to be liable for carrying, has to be an akira, picking up, carrying it outside, and then putting it down. Where are you putting it down? When you're swallowing it. So the eating part of it is very relevant according to the mayor in this case, because it's happening during the eating, the Easter of Shabbos. It's all one thing. Says more further. Says more further. So Rameh is one who holds that all of these certain you say Isa Chalisa. Says Gemara, the Rabban counter Rameh said, "Eina min Hashem." This is Shabbos, totally different than what we are talking about over here. Now let's understand Rameh, the lead of the man. Who is Rameh referring to? Even if you want to hold that an Isa Chala Isa, but over here, you intend to do it mitzvah. In the case of the women, you intend to do mitzvah. Why is that important? We had Gemara Shabbos, we were saying Gemara Sukkah, that if somebody's a tobit about mitzvah, if the mitzvah caused you to become all excited, and as a result of that you made a mistake, then you are potter from a card mechatas, because it's not really your fault. It's a mitzvah that caused you. We had a few different tanaim, whether a Torah or mitzvah, Bishua and Elazar, what the din is. And Rameir follows a lot of Bishua. Hold the Torah or mitzvah, there the case is talking about you had two children to circumcise, one on Sunday and one on Shabbos. And by mistake, you took the Sunday one and you maled it on Shabbos. So if you did that according to one version of the Machlekes, that's a Torah or mitzvah. V'lo yasa mitzvah, you didn't even accomplish a mitzvah, because if you mal a child a day prior to the 8th day, you haven't done anything. But it's a mitzvah that got excited. And there's an argument there whether you're potter. There's another way of learning that it's talking about you had a baby Friday and Shabbos, and you did the Friday baby on Shabbos, and the Shabbos baby on Friday. And we say Torah bar mitzvah, and there's the awesome mitzvah, because the Friday baby a day late, you still did a mitzvah, even though it's not ideal, you still performed the mitzvah. Or do we say that no, that since you had no right to the Shabbos baby you already did on Friday, so Nitnu Shabbos Litchais, no longer Shabbos had the right to mala any child, nothing impending here, and therefore maybe you're chayv. But anyway, as we'll see, the maid holds like a shua Torah mitzvah pot. So they're here, but in the case of the married women, they're both doing the mitzvah of getting married. So therefore, if this mistake happened, we're talking about it's a mistake, and inadvertently, they should be pot because it's the mitzvah got them excited. Says the Gemara, the simple answer would be that this follows Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that Torah mitzvah yechayv, and that's why yechayv. One answer. Maybe he holds that Bishua Torah is a pot, but here's different. Why? Kikam Bishua Torah is a pot, and tonight is only the case of the bris milah, this manic ball. You're all excited. The pressure is on. The pressure is not on because you could wait. What's the big rush? You can wait another day or two, just check everything out, make sure that you have all the details correctly. It's inexcusable. Says the Gemara, you're telling me that the only time that you're exempt of the pressure is on. What about truma? The ain't money ball. There's no pressure when you have to eat truma. Yet to kapata, we learned that by mistake you ate truma. You pot. What happened? That now we learned. Cain was eating truma. The night, the middle of eating, suddenly he became aware. He found out that his mother was a divorcee, which makes him a chal, which means that he has no right to eat the truma. Or he was a son of a chalutza, which midrabanan is considered almost like a divorce, and therefore midrabanan he couldn't eat the truma. Rabbi Eliezer says, well, he ate truma by mistake. Mechayev, the regular laws come into place. He has to pay keren, the chaymich has to pay the principal and the penalty of a quarter of the value. And Rabbi Shua pointed. Rabbi Shua says he pointed because Torah mitzvah. There's no pressure over there. And you're telling me that the only time you're exempt of this pressure. Says the Gemara, didn't we learn a comment? We're talking about a case of truma. There was pressure. When is it possible that truma there's pressure? But truma, it was Erev Pesach. And Erev Pesach, there's pressure that you have to eat the truma before there's man. And therefore there's man above. Therefore, that's why Torah mitzvah you are potter. Or I can tell you another shot here. Who's the author of our Mishnah? The author of our Mishnah, not Rameir. We're not talking in our Mishnah about Isa Koil, Isa Moisef. We're talking about only Isa Bavas Achas. Now, how is it possible that it all should be Bavas Achas? All three cases, Eishes Och, Eishes Ish, and Achos Ish. How can they all be Bavas Achas? I'll tell you how they're all Bavas Achas. The Isa Bavas Achas, leave it. According to Shimon. Could be said that Shimon who holds that Ein Isa Chalisa Bavasachas is made it is Chal. How be so being much said Fish Lemakula, the first three cases of H and Ish, that the two brothers married two sisters and they became us all at the same time. The married woman, your brother's wife, and that your sister and that Reuben and Shimon both married exactly the same time. How's it possible both to marry exactly the same time? They got engaged exactly the same time. We find it the Shavinu Shliach. We're talking about the cases we made. A shliach, that the brothers made a shliach, v'shavu inu shliach, that both parties made a shliach, and then what happened was that the two brothers made a shliach and said, "Go find two sisters to go find two women to give a kedushin," and the two sisters made a shliach to say, "Go find and receive kedushin." And then what happened was Poga Shlev, the two shluchim met each other, and they both gave each other the shliach of the men, gave the putters to the shliach of the women, so they were kabel both at the same time. So therefore they all got engaged exactly at the same time. So the Easter of H is Ish, the Easter of H is Och, and Achais Isha all happened concurrently. Fine. Elenidas Hechim have to be both at the same time together with the Kedushin. It had to be at the same time. If it happened after they got engaged, it's not at the same time anymore. And in fact, the niddah can no longer be chal. It's not bavasachas. And if the niddah came before the kedushin, then if again it's not bavasachas. The other yisurim cannot coincide unless you believe in yisamayisav, yisakar, and all that. But if you don't believe in yisamayisav, if you know that all yisurim are not chal on yisurim, only if it happens concurrently bavasachas. So how can it be either need to have before or after? It can be that both niddas happen exactly the same second. Especially we learned the Yef Shel Tzamtzum. Says Gemara, you know how it's possible? It's possible you can have it b'shefas by the male. The bar mitzvah is when they become chayiv. The wife already became a niddah, or the future wife became a niddah before the boy became 13, and it flowed la'achash la'shasa after 13. Doesn't have to continue flowing. Once you're niddah, you're niddah already. Doesn't have to continue flowing, but it's just an expression. Tyson explains. So it's flowing. So it started before bar mitzvah, but before mitzvah didn't matter, and they got engaged the day that it became bar mitzvah. So all these sudim coincide at the same time, and the same thing is by her. And for her, for her as well, she became a niddah. Two women became niddas right before they became 12 years old, and they're not chayiv anything till they're 12 years old, and the boy's only till 13 years old. So therefore, let's say the birthday was the first day of a month, and they all became bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah exactly on the same day. And what happened? Wait, actually, there's a big chiddush. The boys gave the kedushin to the girls before they were bar mitzvah, and they said we don't want the kedushin to be chal until bar mitzvah. We know that a boy cannot give kedushin, but Rashi is mechadish that the kedushin cannot be chal until the bar mitzvah, but you can give it before bar mitzvah. That it should not take place until bar mitzvah itself, until they become bas mitzvah, and therefore when they became bar mitzvah, all of the surim happened simultaneously because they were under bar mitzvah before then. That's how Rashi learns. Taisa has a problem with that because Taisa says not only you can't be kedushin before bar mitzvah, you cannot even give kedushin before mitzvah to take place when bar mitzvah, and therefore he has another shot in Gemara here. Says the Gemara further. So what does our Mishnah say? What do you do if they swap wives afterwards? What you do is, since it was a mistake, you separate them for 3 months to make sure that they didn't fall pregnant from the wrong husband, so that the kid is a mamzer. And then we said, but they're very young, they couldn't be a children anyway, they can go right back to the husbands. Says the Gemara, why do you have to wait 3 months? There's a rule that a woman cannot fall pregnant for the first bia. The reason why a woman cannot fall pregnant from the first bia is because they still have the hymen, they're a psula. So the first bia breaks the hymen, and the second bia is what penetrates and impregnates the woman. So it's not shaykh. So why do we have to even wait 3 months? They had bila twice that night. The first time they broke the hymen, and the second time they impregnated her at the same night. So the Gemara, why does Abchia say how they can't test zayin chatoy? There are only 16 averes. In other words, 4 people, 4 averes each. And because they had 2 bias that night, so it's double that. It should be 32. Says the Gemara, if you're going to be so pedantic and you're going to say that it counted as that you're going to say that's counted as 2, even though it's behela machas, even though they weren't aware in between they made a mistake. They didn't know until much later. And there's a machlekes if it's 2 to be 2 consecutive avedas and 1 hela, whether you bring 2 kabbanas and 1 carbon. You're going to say that's considered being 2 kabbanas, and let's go further. The Taimech, according to Rabbi holds that even within 1 bia, that many avedas, the that every time that there's a movement, you already chayv another aveda. The tuba has a lot more than 16 or even 32. Who knows how many avedas? Navas. All the counting is the beginning of that Avera. Only counting the first beer, not the second beer of that night. We're not getting into the particulars. It's just the idea that you can commit many Avedas at the same time. You just established that you cannot impregnate a woman with the first beer. How are you going to explain Yehud and Tamar? But Tamar, the beer is shiny Abra. Yehud only had one relation with Tamar, and she became pregnant with a twin. So we see that you could fall pregnant from the first beer. Amalei, he said to him, Tamar be'etzba macha. Tamar made sure that she removed the psulah, she removed the hymen, she used her finger to break the hymen. She wanted to become pregnant with Yehuda's children, and therefore over there the first bee was penetrated, made her impregnated her. In the house of Rebbe, all the girls before they had relations with their husbands used to remove their hymen, and they used to call them Tamar Shman. The name was Tamar. They did Hashem Shemayim, but every bee should count for children, and therefore they were all known as Tamar. The must be Alshem Tamar Shemacha Bezbod. They called it Tamar because she used to remove her hymen in order to have children. So that's why they're all nicknamed Tamar. Says the Gemara, but look, I don't understand. Why did Tamar have to go ahead and do a pula to remove the hymen? Well, how the Eva Oinen? What about Eva Oinen? Very puzzling Gemara here. The Gemara starts off saying Tamar had the first beer. And how did she fall pregnant? Now the Gemara is saying it wasn't the first beer. She lived with she lived with she lived with Einon, so it wasn't the first beer at all. So what's going on here? Unless the Gemara in the beginning didn't realize what the reason was why the first beer. Maybe every time you have a relation, whoever the man is, the first beer doesn't count. It's only the second beer. And the Gemara explains, no, it's not because a relation with a man, the first beer doesn't count. It's because you have psulim, then you have a hymen that blocks the way. And once you remove it, then the beer, it doesn't matter if it's with any man, it's the first time, you can still have beer. So the Gemara has a question, so then that's shot, Eva Oinen, she already had beer. Hence the Gemara, no, she didn't. Eva Oinen, Shimshish Legadaka. Why were they Rishayim? Because they did not have beer with her the normal way of Tashmish. Makes the last question. So let me ask you, you're telling me Aaron had no Tashmish at all in the regular way with Tamar, therefore she was still a psula even after all those years. So let me ask you a question. It says called the 24 months when a woman just gave birth and she has to nurse a child, and if she falls pregnant again, she might stop nursing. It's sakana for the child if she cannot nurse the child. So therefore, what should a husband do according to this opinion? You can have normal relations, but make sure that the no shich that penetrates her, do it outside. David Abelezer, how can you do that? It's exactly how Eva Oinen behaved. In other words, how did Eva Oinen behave? They did have tashmish with her, but they just didn't put the zera inside her. So what do you tell me that Tamar was still a psula? Says the Gemara, when we said over here, Kemais Eva Oinen, we meant the outcome of Eva Oinen, not the method. The method was different. Eva Oinen never had tashmish, and you aren't having tashmish. But the outcome is the same, that you didn't make her pregnant. And that's why we call it Kemais Eva Oinen. Like Kemais Eva Oinen. Kemais Eva Oinen, he destroyed the zera. But like Kemais Eva Oinen, they never had normal tashmish. And here is normal tashmish. Says the Gemara, and I understand the further see baby shichas arts. By Oinen, it says clearly that he threw away the zera. You understand? Okay, it makes sense. I know I did anything wrong. It says by Yevamos Daf, they killed him also. It sounds like he died for the same reason. That he died for the same reason. They didn't want to make her pregnant. The second one didn't want to make her pregnant because he felt it wouldn't be his child. It's the first one's child. Why should he even bother having children? Says the Gemara, I understand why Oinen was against the second one. Children is named after Eir, so why should he bother? He married Tamar. Why did he behave this way? He didn't want to make her lean and to lose her beauty. He didn't want her to become pregnant. Tanabanim we learned. It says the pasuk, it says when a woman is a shechozeh and a woman, she has to go to the mikveh. It says the pasuk, Oisa prat lekala, but the first night by a kala, if the shechozeh, she doesn't have to go to the mikveh. Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim say prat. The shechozeh being inside her is not a problem because the tumah is based on studim, a tumah inside is not a problem, and therefore it's all right. But still, we know from a pasuk that every shechozeh she has to go to the mikveh, but not a kala. Come to the and say, Prat, no, not to exclude a kalav, to exclude Shalai Kedarka. The relation was not the normal way. She don't have to go to mikveh. Amalei Hein, but Nachman Hein was a big Talmud Chacham. The son of Nachman said to his father, Nachman Lema, what's the sword of Rabbi Yehuda? Maybe Rabbi Yehuda Kasava had Torah Chasa al Tachshite Kala. The Torah had Rachmanas on the Kala. She spent so much time putting on makeup. If you make it go to mikveh that night, she loses all that makeup, and therefore we want to do that. Let's taste that anyway. Even if you don't do the kala, but the moment she gets out of bed and she stands up, this shichvazet inside her that comes out on her skin, it's no longer based on studying, she'll become tummy. So what did you gain? So Taisha says either she can, as long as she's lying there, and therefore she can lie the whole night, or she can put a moich there before she stands up to wipe it all up so nothing flows out on her skin. Now, so he thought the reason is so that she lose her makeup. Malay, his Ram Nachman said to him, no, it's called Shichva Zera. It has to be row to be Mazriach. Since the first night, it's not row, therefore it doesn't count. So what's the argument of Rabbi Lezer and the Chachamim? Rabbi Lezer said that it excludes a Kal Chacham. It doesn't. Rabbanan said Shichva Zera. When it says a pasuk Shichva Zera, that can able to be mazik and impregnate her prat lahara. If he just started the movement, machlekes it was in the if it just the aver touching her, or even if he entered inside but nothing further than that, then he's not shy to have children. So therefore, he doesn't have to go to mikveh. And what is it? Oisa, prat if you don't have the normal way of tashmish. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, not having the normal way of tashmish and hara is really the same thing. It wasn't the full shichva zera. So therefore, that both comes excluded from the same word. They both do not fall under the banner of shichva zera. What do you do with the word oisa? Prat lekala the first night. He's ki asa Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so that's the machlekes. Bottom line is that the first, you asked a question about the first beer. How come? What are you worried about? So we established that the first beer doesn't. A woman doesn't start the kabul can't pregnant. But we said now we're talking about you had twice beers, and we're not going to count every single time. No, why do you want to separate 3 months? Because they had beer twice. Now the Gemara says an interesting thing. We learned over here. When Rabbi came along to the Rabbi Yechon, a woman became a widow or was divorced 10 years and had no interest in men. Then Nisas, and then she gets married. Shuv Eina Yeledes is no longer able to bear children. Nachman said, that's not talking about Elisha ain't died till he nasa. That's only talking about if she gave up on ever getting married again. Aval died till he nasa, but she had intentions to get married, even though she didn't and had no relations. Mis abedes. In her mind, if she wanted to bear children in the future, get married in the future, then she's still able to bear children. Later Rav Chizek was married to Rav Bachama. Then when he died, she waited 10 years before Rav's other wife passed away, before she married Rav. Rav was a son-in-law of Rav Chizek, as I learned a few times already. And Rav said to Rav Chizek, and then she gave birth to a child. So Rav said to Rav Chizek, the daughter, everybody's going to start saying that you must have had relations with single men between the death of your husband, Rav Bachama, and myself, because you gave birth to a child, and 10 years elapsed between your previous marriage. She said to Rabbi, she's a very smart woman. I was thinking about you the whole time. I didn't get married to you because you're already married to another woman, but I was thinking about you the whole time. In fact, the Gemara will see in Bobasra about that. This woman came to Rabbi Yosef. She said, Rebbe, I want you to know that the Chazal were wrong. I was single for 10 years after my husband died, the Yolanity, and I still was able to bear children. So she was sort of taunting him or mocking what the Chazal said. Amalei Biti, Chas v'Sholom, you should never mock the Chazal. They're always right. My daughter, confess the truth. Tell her the truth. Were you celibate all these 10 years? Amalei, finally she relented and she said, I had relations with her good. So the Chazal were 100% right. Amash was a Shmuel. The cool and Mishnah says that everyone has to wait 3 months to determine whether it's from the first husband, second husband. The only one that doesn't have to is a very young child, as we'll see later. The Gemara, the Mishnah says, because they cannot bear children, and we'll see the Gemara later what kind of case that's talking about. Comes along Shmuel and he says, so Shmuel comes along and says, you always have to wait 3 months. Chutz, except the following 2 cases: Yeidus, a convert, Shochredes, and a woman, a shivcha who was free, liberated Kitana, if they were both young at the time. They don't have to wait. Even though generally in Ayved and Chacham Shivcha were definitely promiscuous, but when it comes to a Ketana, it doesn't matter. They can't have children, and therefore we weren't goyzer that they have to wait after the tefillah another 3 months. And we'll see later in the Gemara that a doila of a giyaris doesn't have to wait. Shouldn't really have to wait because they want to become a yid. They're going to make sure that the children that they're going to bear are going to be 100% Jewish. So right now Shmuel seems to, but everyone else, even a Jewish girl, a Tana, should wait 3 months between the first and the second, even though she's not shy to have children. And our Mishnah says you don't have to, and there's no point in any havchana to determine. Nevertheless, we have to wait, and Gemara will explain. And the reason will be because we're goyzer a Tana atum shum doila. But when it comes to a giyadis and a shivcha, there's no point in having a gzeir. So the Gemara, but a Jewish girl, even though she cannot bear children, there's no reason to have havchana to make that determination. You have to wait 3 months. What are we talking about? This young girl, even that she walked out on her husband. If she walked on her husband, so we're not going to be guys that she was never the wife anyway. So you don't have to wait 3 months. We beget, and if the idea was she was divorced, and therefore by Tana were guys that you have to wait 3 months up to a gedola, also you have to wait 3 months. And this is valid reason. How much more Chadazimi said it once? How much more me and the boy if she was a mine? Ain't it? You don't have to wait 3 months. There's no reason to make a gzeda, no havchana. And because a gdoila can never leave just by walking out, so there's no point in the gzera. Nasan will get, if you gave a get to a 11-year-old and an 11-month girl who walked out, you have to wait. And if she got a divorce, 11, so you have to wait 3 months because next time a 13-year-old girl will think you don't have to wait. Ella, so what's going on here? We're talking about a case of nus. She was underage, she was mezana, and you don't have to, and he's saying over here that you do have to wait 3 months. Because even though it was nus, a gedola has to wait 3 months, and you have chana. A ketana also should have to wait 3 months. But however, by Gator, since this doesn't happen that frequently, since Leshkiach, Gator that age, so therefore we don't, or Shivcha, therefore that's liberated, we don't have to make a Gzeda. Says the Gemara, you can make a Gzeda for a young girl that she has to wait 3 months. You need to have chana because a Gzeda needs to have chana. But now we learned in our Mishnah clearly, if they were young, if there was young, the case of the two brothers that got mixed up, if she was young and she's not cannot bear children, she's not of that age, they can remarry straight away. But I'm making a Gzeda. I'm not giving it up. This is a spur of the moment thing. Says the Gemara, what? Was it a story? Something? Meklal, the Havoy, well, this is a real story. We treat it like a Hirasha. Why? Because this whole story that two brothers got engaged with two sisters and then they swapped wives, didn't realize who's who. It is such a rare occasion, such a rare story that we're not going to make a Zayd and tell her, you know what, you have to have a Chanda if you're under 12 because maybe next time I can go with it. Same like a Giyadis and a Shivcha, because it's rare, we're not going to make a Zayd. Okay, this stops to finish the Gemara. Tomorrow we'll learn another version of what Shmuel actually had to say. Have a good day, everybody.